Welcome to another episode in Onfleet's partnership series. Today we're here with an Onfleet partner, Dutchie, and Jon Bond, Dutchie's Director of Partnerships. Jon, welcome.
Hey, Steven, thanks for having me.
So I understand that Dutchie is the e-commerce solution for the cannabis space, but I'd love to hear more from you just about the company and what you guys do.
Yeah, totally. You know, from an executive standpoint, our founders have a ton of experience in building and scaling technology platforms. Specifically, our CEO started one of the first online food ordering companies in the U.S. When he was like 19 years old. He ended up building that to what it was, selling it, then moving across Lake Michigan to Canada and starting the exact same type of company, obviously avoiding the non-compete, and built that. It was called Grub Canada, and scaled it to be the first and largest online ordering food company for about 4 years running in the space. And so, you know, realistically, while there are a ton of differences and obvious ones at that between the food space and the cannabis space, you know, scaling a consumer-facing e-commerce platform, you know, obviously has its own challenges as you get through that. And so that being said, you know, the idea for Dutchie was kind of born in 2015 when our CEO was living in Bend, Oregon, where we're actually headquartered now, and they passed recreational cannabis, and he went to go to the dispensary for the first time, and there was a line around the building. And so it was kind of one of those light bulb moments where like, there's a huge opportunity here. And so Dutchie was born in Q4 of 2017, and then fast forward to today. We're powering online ordering for over 2,000 retailers in 32 states plus Canada. And we have over 170 employees on our team, which is really exciting. And so it's been a really wild ride over the last couple of years, and we're really excited to continue to help push the industry forward. So, you know, up until this point, at least, you know, it's kind of been the biggest company you've never heard of. We don't really advertise ourselves. And a lot of times when you go to like our dispensary partners' websites, you'll be shopping on a Dutchie menu that's actually embedded in their site without even knowing it. And so, you know, the way that we've been able to grow the way that we have is really through strength in partnerships, obviously Onfleet being one of those, right? And so everyone knowing that Onfleet's, you know, best in class, not only in the cannabis space, but also from, you know, the grocery delivery side and other technologies there. They're the best in class last mile technology. And the way we look at it is, you know, kind of like a left-hand, right-hand scenario, right? Like one is not quite as valuable without the other. They definitely can function independently, but partnership has really been one of the things, not just obviously on the last mile side, but on the point of sale side, texting and loyalty. We've been very fortunate to grow alongside best-in-class partners in the space as well, too.
You use the left-hand, right-hand analogy. Can you kind of explain that and just explain a little more about how the integration between Dutchie and Onfleet works?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I say left hand, right hand, you know, the idea is that they work together to provide a better experience for the end user. And one of the things that people may or may not know about the cannabis technology space is that it's incredibly fragmented. And there has been very, very loud examples of companies that have tried to do too much. And when I say too much, is it like, okay, am I going to be a best-in-class e-commerce technology and also try to build a point of sale simultaneously? Whereas, you know, you're really stretching your resources pretty thin in that sense.
Yeah.
And so we've built an entire business around being experts in one thing, which is online ordering and e-commerce and driving sales to our retail partners, storefronts or non-storefronts in certain markets like California. And so, you know, the ability for us to work alongside with strong partners like Onfleet means that we don't have to develop that last mile technology because Onfleet's already got it figured out. So the second piece to that is, you know, flexibility and, you know, being able to build world-class integrations with all of our technology partners, Onfleet being one of them. And so if you want to think about how, you know, Onfleet and Dutchie work in conjunction with one another, the order comes in on Dutchie, and it is passed immediately to Onfleet, where it's being managed in the Onfleet app by the driver. And then when that order is closed out in Onfleet by the particular driver for that retailer, it's going to be automatically closed out in the point of sale and Dutchie as well too. And so realistically, it just creates a turnkey solution for the retailer in a world where there are, you know, 1,000,001 moving parts as a cannabis retailer throughout the day, right? So our ability to seamlessly connect all of those means they're able to put more time back in the day and then ultimately, you know, do more sales, whether it be online or on that sense of the word as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, you said that this idea was sort of born out of going to a dispensary and seeing a long line. You know, I mean, today we're speaking in early March of 2021. Their stores are not crowded. They can't be. So I'm How has 2020 affected this industry and Dutchie in particular? And what lessons have you guys drawn from?
The lessons are infinite. I think the overarching theme for the industry and technology providers in general is, everyone's great until they have to scale. And that doesn't exist just in cannabis, but specifically in the cannabis technology space, because there are so many from state to state, there's different regulations, different taxes, ability to do different things. And so to be able to deliver a unified experience on the front end, but also reflect that from a technology stack standpoint is a huge deal. And in terms of how it impacted the industry, you really saw a pressure test on a lot of the technology platforms, not just Dutchie and Onfleet, right? But like point of sale technologies, texting and loyalty technologies. You really saw what they were made of when you just, 10x volume over the course. And just to give you a perfect example, that first week of March, we did across all of our dispensaries about $8 million in GMV that first week, gross merchandise value, meaning sales through our platform, right? The very next week, as everything shut down, that jumped up to 24 million. So you got to imagine, right? If you're doing 3x the volume with the same amount of dispensaries, well, that's super exciting. And even though we don't really build in like a transactional environment, right? You've got 3 times the customer support request, 3 times the engineering request, 3 times everything. And so if you weren't ready to meet that head on, it was a very difficult place to be as a technology provider. Unfortunately, from an infrastructure standpoint and from a team standpoint, we were very well dialed in and ready to meet that head on, because online ordering is still a relatively new concept, right? When we talk about integrations 3 years ago, when we started this, I think we only had maybe one point of sale integration, and it wasn't super common. And so, you get, 3 years fast forward where everything's integrated with the point of sale. And then you've got states, like cannabis retailers, for example, like in Colorado, right? It's a program, it's a legacy program. It's been around for a while. It was kind of a 1 or a 0 whether people cared about online ordering or not. It was either like, yes, we understand how this is going to impact and benefit our business, or no, we're not interested. We're going to sell that product anyways. And then you've got states like Colorado that pass regulation that say, okay, dispensaries are an essential business. You can stay open as a dispensary, but you've got to offer online ordering, and it has to be curbside pickup. So then ultimately, we work with probably 350 retailers in the state of Colorado. You've got a ton of retailers that are like, okay, we've got to get online ordering set up as fast as possible. And so it shifted the industry's perspective on the tech platforms they were using. I mean, same thing with delivery, like in Michigan, right? They passed an emergency delivery ordinance that would have probably taken years to get through legislation for the Michigan cannabis industry. But now that that's been passed and we're kind of over the height of the pandemic, that's never going to be undone. And so we saw probably 2 years of cannabis industry reform from a regulatory standpoint happen in the course of a couple of months. And so the industry was able to grow up very quickly in that sense. And so now you've got retailers that, it's really testing not just the technology infrastructure that you put in place, but your operational infrastructure as well too. And so when you think about how like a Dutchie and Onfleet play into that, our entire business is creating easier access to cannabis for licensed retailers who we consider to be our partners. And obviously when I say access, I'm talking about consumers, right? And so the ability for us to tie that together in a seamless way, we've just seen, a crazy adoption of technology in a space that traditionally was a little more grassroots. And so it's been really exciting and seeing the growth of what's happened over the last year or so.
Okay, yeah, that's a really interesting portrait of how much has changed in so little time. Yeah, coming out of that craziness, or I guess we're kind of still in it, but just what does the next year look like for you guys?
Yeah, we're really excited for what the future holds. As I mentioned, we were forced to what we call blitz scale over the last year, which was really exciting from the standpoint of being able to go out and raise money and hire the way that we know that we need to meet the industry of where it's at. So we've raised, 53 million in the last 3 years as a company, most recently being a $35 million Series B that allows us to really spread our wings in terms of what we can do from a technology and capability standpoint. And so one of the more exciting things for us is our release of what we consider to be a headless e-commerce system. And that's an industry familiar term, but essentially it's allowing retailers to build an entirely custom e-commerce on top of an API layer that's powered by our administrative layer, integrations, and support system, right? So, while we know that we have a very clean UI, and it's actually interesting, we were looking at statistics from 2020, and we actually had a higher conversion rate than Amazon, which is a huge testament to, our chief product officer and our entire product design team all the way down, right? But ultimately, when you talk about big multi-state operators, and I said we work with over 2,000 retailers in the US and Canada, we do work with several of those, what we call MSOs or multi-state operators or enterprise accounts. And all of those high-end enterprise MSO accounts, in a perfect world, they want to be able to have their own UI, their own, custom e-commerce experiences, SEO friendly, but supporting that and building that is one thing. But being able to support that on the back end from an administrative standpoint, from an integration standpoint with the myriad of different companies is very difficult. And so, from like what we consider to be a game-changing approach, you now can do that and leverage our support and infrastructure. So ultimately, our customers love us because, yes, we have a super clean UI, UX, our features are best in class, but the reason they really love us is because when you reach out to us, our support team gets back to you in under 30 seconds. Or, we're able to seamlessly set up the Onfleet integration in less than 10 seconds because we pre-built that. And it takes them less than 2 or 3 days to get set up on our platform and start moving forward. And so ultimately, this Dutchie Plus product is going to allow us to meet any type of retailer where they're at in terms of desire customization, right? So we have our off-the-shelf solution that works for probably 95% of our partners, but then we also have this headless e-commerce, which is Dutchie Plus, that gives you the flexibility of being entirely custom on the front end, but still utilizing the most important piece of that. And so that's going to be a huge piece to it. I think from an industry standpoint, there's 2 really big things that are going to happen in the next year that I'm hoping for. The first is safe banking. And think about it this way, right? Like, think about how much the industry has grown as a cash-only business and how much that slows down operations, both from like a buy-sell as a retailer and then as a consumer, right? And thinking about how much higher ticket averages are when you can swipe your card, you're not trying to make something work within the $60 budget that you just pulled from the ATM, 10 minutes ago because you just walked into the dispensary. And so the speed and rate at which the growth is going to be able to happen in the space is going to be huge. And then I truly hope, and I'm thinking and hoping we're going to get there, but decriminalization of cannabis on that side of it too, because ultimately cannabis has become a multi-billion-dollar a year industry, and there's still, tens of thousands of people sitting in a jail cell right now, and many of them being minorities and people of color and disenfranchised groups, while people are out there making billions of dollars on the plant. So hoping that, the ability to, expunge a lot of those, I'm really hoping for that. And ultimately, the opportunity for social equity licenses to be awarded, which many states are working on that as well too. And so that's going to be a really exciting thing to see take flight, which I think we're closer now than ever in terms of that conversation as an industry. And so I think from a general standpoint, what you're really going to see is the industry is going to continue to scale and level up. We've already seen some mergers and acquisitions and roll-ups happen. That's going to continue to happen, right? But ultimately, the speed at which the industry is able to grow is going to increase dramatically. It's a really exciting thing for us, and I think the industry as a whole.
What you're anticipating is there are going to be a lot more multi-state operators and kind of just larger cannabis operations in general starting up and growing in the next few years. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, whether there's going to be more than there are today or whether or not they're going to be actually larger than they are today, I would probably bet on the latter, right? Because what's happening is a lot of these MSOs that have the infrastructure and the resources and the ability to go out and raise capital, they're going on M&A, like basically just like an M&A excursion, right? Picking up, dispensary licenses, cultivation licenses, manufacturing in different states, and really being able to expand that footprint. Because as most people may or may not know, right, cannabis is a very difficult business to be profitable in, right? And so ultimately, there's always going to be big money and big companies coming to the space. And so I think you're going to continue to see a lot of consolidation. But ultimately, for us, our piece in that is making sure that, our flexibility within integration, whether it's on the mom and pop side or on the MSO side, we can really meet those retailers wherever they're at.
My last question is sort of just along those same lines. Everything has changed so rapidly, and you've talked about some of the ways that it's changing. Looking a little bit further ahead, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, what do you think this industry will look like?
Honestly, big business is getting into the space as we see it today, right? And to deny that big business is not just circling at a 30,000 foot view and looking at how things are evolving in the space and normalization of the plant, that's going to happen, right? And to deny that there's going to be, big business influence and participation in the industry would be silly. It'd be super naive, right? And so where I see 3 to 5 years, I see a lot more big institutional, either VCs or funds getting involved in investment in the space and picking, for lack of a better term, picking a horse and betting on it and trying to expand that. I also see direct to consumer becoming a much bigger thing as well too. And so, there's a lot of like legacy and institutional brands in the space, the 710 Labs of the world, the Shabinskis, the Cookies, who's a great partner of ours, right? Their brand is bigger than it's one of those larger than life brands, right? And so people go and shop specifically for that brand, almost like any other space where they are brand loyal, but there's a larger sense of brand loyalty to that in cannabis than anything else. And so I see those types of companies continuing to evolve their strategy to be able to go direct to consumer in addition to being sold through the retailer. And then, just from a data standpoint, we've seen deliveries, not just with the pandemic, but slowly but surely they're continuing to climb, right? Delivering cannabis is not necessarily like delivering anything else, right? There's a ton more red tape. There's regulations. There's liability associated with it. There's a cost associated with it if you're a retailer. And so I think we're going to start to see, as these retailers continue to get their feet underneath them from an operational standpoint, we're going to see delivery become a much, much bigger part of the industry because, just like anything, right? And we say this all the time. Once you get used to the ease of online ordering and then eventually delivery and having something taken right to your door, there's really no going back from that, right? It's like, and as a retailer too, you love that because online orders from just a statistical standpoint have a higher online order ticket average, right? So it's like up to 30% higher ticket average. Because if you think about the shopping experience, right? Like I take my mom to a dispensary and, she's so excited to be there because it's a new thing to her. My parents are in Kansas City, right? So not a place where there's been legal cannabis for a long time, even though Missouri's taking off as we speak. We wait 30 minutes in line. I get her to the counter and, because she feels bad, she's going to rush and make a decision and purchase something and leave. Whereas if you're shopping online and you have the freedom of, oh, I like this, I want to read about this, I want to find out more about that, all of a sudden you've got 5 more things in your cart that you weren't planning on putting in there, right? And so for the retailer, it's going to be better too. And so I'm really excited to see, as these kind of companies come into their own, the consolidation of companies in the technology space too, because we have over, 30 integration partners, I would say. And, every company is great until they have to scale, like I said earlier too. And so, for us, we're able to support all these integrations in a super complete way, but we're really excited to see leaders emerge, like, for example, Onfleet in the space, right? We know that no matter what happens, Onfleet's going to take care of business on their end the same way that we're going to on our end, which ultimately allows us to look forward as opposed to having to look over our shoulder as to our partnerships, performing the way that they need to. And so that sense of surety in an industry that's completely uncertain is one of the most powerful things you can have in terms of being able to grow. And so we're going to start to see more of that too, for sure.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thanks for filling us in and just sharing your thoughts on your company and Onfleet and the whole industry. On a personal note, just before the call, I went to check you guys out and actually found that there was a dispensary closer to me than the one that I have been going to, where I can order online.
Nice.
So one more satisfied customer.
I love that, man.
Before we sign off, can you just tell the listeners, if they're curious, how they can learn more about Dutchie?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's a couple different ways. The easiest is on our website, Dutchie.com. You can use that to shop and see which dispensaries we work with in your particular area. And like I mentioned, we're in 32 states. We only work with licensed dispensaries. I probably should point that out as well too. And so there's Dutchie.com. You can also check us out on our Instagram, which is We Are Dutchie. And then as far as like being able to stay up to date with some of the features and things, we also are releasing a blog that you can access through our website as well too. And so also additionally, we're hiring like crazy. So we're at a calling all rock stars mode right now. And so I mentioned we have like over 170 employees today. We're looking to double that in the next year based on some of the initiatives that we have in the hopper in terms of like growth and what we're continuing to innovate on. And so if working for the fastest growing, company in cannabis technology seems like something that would be something you would be interested in, we'd love to hear from you. Right now, we're getting about 650 resumes a week, and we're constantly posting new jobs and new opportunities. But the last thing I would probably say is that we are an extremely culture-driven company, and it's been really interesting to see how we can continue to maintain that through the pandemic in an entirely remote work setting. But I think one thing we really pride ourselves on is being incredibly genuine in our approach and how we are as people. And so we call it the Dutchie fam for a reason. We would love to continue to expand that. And so if anybody has an interest there, please check out our careers page on our site as well, too.
All right. Well, I mean, there's clearly a lot of exciting stuff going on at Dutchie and in the industry as a whole. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to hear about all that from you today.
Absolutely. Yeah, we really appreciate it. And as always, we appreciate Onfleet's partnership and, our ability to grow with them over the last couple of years. And we're really looking forward to, continuing to innovate and move the industry forward in years to come.